Hey everyone, welcome back. Gabriella Huffman here to help you study for your North Carolina real estate exam. We are on the last video for Chapter 8. Remember, Chapter 8 is going through agency agreements, and I broke this down to 4 video series. We're going to talk about disclosure statements, the RPOs, which is the Residential Property Owners Association disclosure statement, and the MOG, mineral oil gas rights. So who requires these forms would be the state of North Carolina, not the association, not my firm. The state of North Carolina requires this. When are they due to the buyer? Either at time of offer or within 3 days of contract. There's some other 3 days exceptions, but usually when you remember within 3 days of contract, you'll get it right. So do all sellers have to fill this out? No. Most sellers, yes, because there are some exceptions, or in other words, types of sellers that do not have to fill this out, such as new construction, foreclosures, commercials, and rent to own. Those types of transactions or sellers are not required to do the Residential Property Owners Association disclosure statement. Who fills it out? The seller. Don't choose agents do or agents assistants. It's not our house. The only person that can fill it out is the seller. Now we can assist as far as talking about what the rules are, what happens if they check yes, no, and no representation, but we should not fill this out. So let's talk about the difference between property defects and material facts. So what is the purpose of this RPOs? It gives the seller the opportunity to disclose any property defects, not material facts. So remember, material facts is required by license law. So only licensees must disclose material facts. So what sellers can disclose would be property defects. So if they ask you, is it the seller's job to disclose material facts on the disclosure statement? No. Material facts is an agent's duty to disclose, and we don't put that on, we don't fill it out on the disclosure statement. We don't put that on the disclosure statement, but the seller does have the opportunity to disclose property defects. So do for sale by owners have to do this? Yes. If they don't follow under one of the exemptions, yes. So as a buyer's agent, assisting a buyer and buying a for sale by owner, you still need to make sure these documents get to your buyer by their due dates. What about as is properties? Do they have to do the RPOs? Yes, they do. So make sure you go back to reread the section on who's required to of most sellers and who the exemptions apply to. The mineral oil gas rights disclosure, pretty much the same rules as the RPOs. I highlighted the ones that are different. So vacant land does not require the mineral oil gas rights disclosure statement. I know that seems odd, but if you look at the disclosure statement in your book, the first page, the instructions page, says most sellers of residential dwellings, they have to have dwelling on it, 1 to 4 units. That means that there has to be a home or some sort of structure on it in order to use this. So vacant land doesn't have, they're not improved, it doesn't have any structure or home, so they're exempt from it. Can a seller check no representation on the MOG? Yes. There are only 2 questions in which they can. When they're asked if the previous owner has severed the rights, they may not know. So those are the only 2 questions that if the seller wants to, they can check no representation. But all the other questions directly to the seller, have you seller severed, or seller, do you intend to sever? They must answer those questions. So that concludes a very brief part about the disclosure statement. So please, again, go reread those, take your highlighter, because those are always on your test. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll see you in the next video.